Hi all, this is Catherine from Katie June Studios. I've been promising you all a video tutorial on how I make my bubble quilt. I do it in a different way than is typical, and I'm up to the very final rows of making this, and I've had multiple failed attempts because I'm still learning how to edit and do things like that. And even though we're in the middle of healing from some sickness, I decided I'm going to power through and show you how this is done. Now, as you can see, I got most of this ginormous one done. This is going to be big enough for a king-size quilt. However, I'm going to be showing you how I did it on the last row, and we're going to improvise and pretend we know what I'm talking about as to how to get it started. So here we go. The first thing you're going to do is, oh, my little squares. I lost my little squares. You're going to have your backing. Oh, here they are. And you're going to be cutting your squares for each of these. Each of the little puffs is a square. And then I've got a backing and I've got fiber fill in the middle. So for each of my puffs, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be taking, how big is this square? It's been so long, I don't remember. I think it's 5 by 5. Yep, I cut all my squares 5 by 5. For my quilt, I decided to have patterns and solids or pseudo-solids. So for this demo, I'm just going to show you with what I have. Now what we need to do is we need to take these and pleat them down to make 4.5-inch squares that we assemble. And this is how I made mine. What I did is I took my squares, I took a backing area, and I taped it off to give myself 4.5 inches. What's nice about this is it has a very slight lip, so I can feel it. So I match up one edge with the 0 mark right at the edge, and then I pinch the other to match into the other mark. Take the center, fold it over, and stick a pin in it. Now I'm going to be doing this on one side only of all of my blocks. Right now I'm only demonstrating it with 4 blocks, but I used 24 blocks for each row of mine. Most of these are done as baby blankets, and they're typically 7 to 10 squares, puffs in a row. So when you do that, again, I hold it on one side, I pinch it to the 4.5-inch mark, and then I just take my center and squish it and stick a pin in it. Now I've also done this with a ruler where I used electrical tape, so it's got an even bigger edge. And you can do it that way also, where I match this at the 0 and I match this at the 4.5, which I put a little line there. I don't know if you could see it on the video, but there's a little tiny line there that I used. And then again, you're going to pinch your fabric in the middle, smish it, and stick a pin in it. And I just keep doing them, and pardon this one, it's got a stain on it, because I did use shirts to make some of these. I reused my husband's old shirts because I thought it would be really cool. And this one, of course, would be going in the garbage because I didn't see the stain when I cut it out. But that's okay, perfect for demo. So there we go. We've got a few of them pinned up. And once you've got all of yours pinned up, the next step would be to assemble these. Now, to assemble my rows, what I do is I take one pinned edge and the opposite side of a pin edge and put them face to face, right sides together. Then you pin or clip the far corner, and you match up this corner, the top corner. You put it under your sewing foot. Now what I do is I have it between 1.5 and 2 on my sewing machine for my stitch length. This, I don't think it needs as tiny stitches as I use for regular quilting, so between 1.5 and 2 works for me. I don't bother back stitching. I just stitch forward, and see where you've got your pin in here? You can feel that ridge, and all I do is I take and I stick my finger in the ridge that it makes, the bump, and push it forward. Now I've got a nice double fold. I've got a pleat on this side, and I still have that pleat on the other side. And this makes this edge 4.5 inches long. Now, you're going to do that with all of your pieces. You're going to take your pinned edge and your non-pin edge. You're going to put a clip in the bottom corner or a pin. You're going to match your top corner, stick it under your foot at a 1/4 inch seam, start to stitch, then find your pinch here. I prefer to do it this way so that the seams aren't on top of each other and making too much bulk. And I also like the way that it looks when they butt up the little creases next to each other. Now when you've got all your pieces sewn into 2s, then you're going to take those same pieces and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to have a pinned piece with an unpinned piece, put them face to face, fasten it so it's not moving on you, match your other edge, and stitch. Now you want to pleat it. Again, I can feel that. I can feel it right with my fingernail and push it right down. I take my pin out then because it works, but you can even stitch right over it if you want to. Now eventually, you're going to have them all stitched together into your row. Now this is my last row. The last row. See how all the pinches are together in these corners, but we still don't have pinches anywhere else. So if this was my starting row, I would take this in my backing, and I'm going to demonstrate to you how I make my starting row, but we're not going to actually stitch it because I'm going to be reusing this as my final row on my quilt. So what you're going to want to do, your backing pieces are 4.5 inches wide by the width of however wide your quilt is going to be. What I do is I mark my center with a fold, and then each of your blocks, the finished size, once we pleat the top and stitch it in, is going to be 4 inches. So your block, your puffy piece, here to here and here to here, is 4 inches square when it's finished. So in order to accomplish that, we need to mark our first piece every 4 inches, because that's where our seam is going to land. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, I don't feel well, so I'm counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're doing this on the right side of your backing. No, your wrong side of your backing. And I like to use a heat erasable pen. So you're going to be doing this down the entire length of your backing. When you take your top piece, and I'm going to just find my middle so I can match my middle to my middle. Middle to the middle. Let's see. Yep, it's right here. This seam here is my middle. Now, I'm going to lay it down on top of here, and I'm going to push my seam in one direction. Now, this whole row, the seam is going to go to the right. And in it, you can put a clip, you could put a pin, whatever you want. Then the next seam is going to go on top of that line that we just made. Seam to the right. And we're going to keep going all the way down this first block. Seam to the right. Can you see the marks? And I'm matching them up. Now you're going to do this all the way to the end, but we're cheating because I don't want to, because I'm not keeping it that way. But you'll go all the way down to your very end and see how it's too small because These are 4.5 and these are 4. So if it's matches up just by going like this, then you know you did it wrong. Okay, so once we have all those in place, we're going to be keeping our seam to one side, and we're going to be stitching straight down this seam. All the way down this seam, wherever one of these are, you're going to match it up and stitch down in your first row. Then when that's done, you're going to squish. Okay, we're going to pretend that we stitched it. I'm going to shove some pins in. I'm sorry, if I had done this from the beginning, this would be so much easier for you to visualize, but hopefully this will be sufficient. So we're going to match that up and stick a pin in you. Wait, I missed it. Okay. And we're going to... And so once these seams are all stitched down, ouch, where this is, then the other thing you need to do on your starting row is stitch across the bottom. And to do that, you're going to need to pinch your pleats down in the center. Now see how your backing is the 4-inch that we did, and your top is still 4.5 inches. So when you pinch it, I'm struggling because nothing's sewn down. That's okay though. But you pinch it, you flatten it, and you put your clip in. Now remember, these are stitched down already, so you really only need them on this one edge. And when you do that, it's going to prepare it for the stuffing. So all of these are going to be sewn so that that is all stitched in, and that will end up looking like this. See how it's all stitched across with a pinch on my starting row. Then I stuffed them and added the next row. And that's where we're going to pick it up now. Let me undo all the mess I made here, and we're going to pick it up there. So basically, from this point on, all the other rows you're going to do according to the rest of these directions. The first row is the only one that you have to mark your backing. On the rest of them, whoops, why did I turn that around? I'm going to need that. On the rest of the rows, what I do is I mark, because this is very large, I mark my quarter spots on my backing. So I would press it in the center, and I would fold it. Now I cut mine a little bit long. I would fold it on the quarter spots, and I would press this too, so I have 4 marks. But if you're making a smaller quilt like most people do, you're only going to have like 8 squares or so. So having a mark in your center will make it easier for you to be sure that your pinches are evenly spaced. So then, when you've got, here we go, let's wrestle the anaconda here. This is huge, guys. This is absolutely huge. My husband's gonna love this on our bed. He asked me for this. And so this is a surprise for him. So what you're going to do next is stuff them and attach your next row. And you can either stuff them first, like I've done down this end, or stuff them after you attach your front and back. And I'm going to demonstrate both ways for you. So if you're stuffing as you go, what you're going to do is you're going to put not a lot of stuffing, but a sufficient amount of stuffing. I like to understuff because honestly, this is ginormous and it's going to be really, really heavy. But you can stuff it with even more stuffing than I did. Just remember that if you do, shove it way deep in and pack it hard so that after you sew, it'll fill your gap. But if you have so much, you're not going to be able to sew it. It's going to push your pins out of the way. It's going to mutilate your fabric in all sorts of shapes. And it'll make it really, really difficult. So you can stuff it and put your pins in with your pleat. You know, I stuffed it all in. And again, with the same thing, you make your pleat in it and stick your pin in. So you can do it that way. And you could do all of them if you want to. I did up to here. Not these. These 3 aren't done. Now what you're going to do next is you're going to take your back piece, and you're going to find your center, and you're going to find your center of your squares. That could be my center. Let's count. I know I have 12 in as center. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this is my center here, and this is the center of my backing. And you're going to put them right sides together, matching your center folds. And you're going to pin it in place right on those seams. See how I'm pulling it straight with my backing and pinning it with my seam. And I'm going to do this all the way down the entire backing. And where I've stuffed it already, I'm going to ignore the pins that I put in or clips because it doesn't matter at the moment. We're going to be doing more, and we don't want to keep pinning and unpinning things. So I'm going to keep going down to demonstrate this half. So have you ever made a bubble quilt before? People also call them puff quilts. Gosh, there's so many different names for them, and I don't remember them all. Biscuit quilt. I don't know. But if you have any experience where you've made it before, or if you've received one from a relative that made it long ago, I would love to hear about that in the comments below. So I've got my back almost all lined up. And because I didn't cut my back exactly to size, I'm going to have a little extra on my ends. And I did that intentionally because I was lazy. And I was experimenting various ways. So that's what you're going to do all the way to the other side too. But I'm going to show you that when I show you how to do it the second stuffing method. Then what you're going to do is take your strip of squares and face to face, you're going to put the first one down. Now what I do, since I did an alternating pattern of solid pattern, or plaid pattern, I want to match them up that way. Solid pattern, solid pattern. So I'm counting this as a solid on this one, and I'm counting this as a pattern. So this will be fine like this. So I'm matching up my corner, because that's going to get stitched. Then I'm going to take this corner, and remember how all the seams went in one direction? I'm going to match my seams in the other direction. So all these seams on this row all go left. So all the seams I'm putting on are going to go right. So I'll take this, push the seam to the right, nest it in there real nice and snug, and put my clip in. Then I'm going to back up to this, where my pinch is, and I'm going to put my pinch in my top piece by tracing it along, squishing it down, and you can do this laying it on the table. I just feel more comfortable doing it in my hands. And put your clip in. Now, if you're concerned that your stuffing is really big in there and it's going to push your clip out, you're right. It probably will by the time you handle it. So you can affix it with a pin. And I put the pin in the second clip. It holds the first pinch down very nicely for me. But again, if you're unsure, double duty works too. Whatever makes you feel confident that you're not going to have to do the same things multiple times. So this is what we do. Push your seam to the right, and see, you can always feel it. Feel it, it's there. It goes the other way. Push it, clip it, line up your backing and your fronting. Is that a word? I don't know. And make your pleat. And I'm going to clip them down. Let's do the next one. Push my nest, my seams. match my fronts and my backs, push my pleat in, fix them all down. Whoop, not that clip. Wow, that clip hit the dust. Sort of like a Jack-in-the-Box when that happens, isn't it? It's like all of a sudden you're happy sewing along. Pop! Oh no! Makes me jump most of the time. Nest, match, fold, clip, match, clip, match, well, nest, should I say? We were nesting those. Clipping, matching, folding. And we do that all the way down to the end. And at this point, once we got all that done, then we would stitch along this top edge, all the way down our 1/4 inch. Now, I'll show you how we do it. Well, actually, let me just finish this up real quick. I'm going to finish this up real quick, real quick. You know, that means not so quick, but we're going to pretend it's quick. Pin. I hope I can learn how to fast forward the video during this part. If so, that's going to save you a lot of boredom, so we can be hopeful. Otherwise, please be patient with me. Don't worry about all the little strings that start to shred, because they're all going to be on the inside. And though I hate all the little strings and I find myself picking them all the time, you just don't want them on the outside of your work. And if so, you can clean them up later. Pardon our growling tummies. And if this isn't going fast forward right now, I'm sure you're very, very bored, because there's not much you can do while you're working, and my throat is so sore right now. I won't be humming or singing or being silly at the moment. And tomorrow will be much nicer, won't it? Yes, it will. I'll feel that much more better. Clip that in. Uh-oh. Now, here we go. We got to the part. This is perfect. Okay, so we got to the part where there's no stuffing. And so this is what you would do if you decided to stuff it in later rather than earlier. So all you're going to do is you're going to match your seams first. You're going to just, you can go through the entire thing, or you can go through one square at a time. I prefer to fill a handful of them at once. To me, it just feels more satisfying. And so I will nestle my seams and put my clips back in. Or in the case that I don't have any clips yet, of course, I will do that also. Match my back, match my front, nest that seam in so lovely, and stick a clip in it. Put a clip in it. Here we go, nestle the seams. Okay, so you get the idea. We're going to do that all the way to the end. Beep, pretend it's done. So now we're going to go back to where we don't have stuffing, or in case of you choosing to do it for the whole seam, you go back to the beginning. Begin again. Okay, so we are going to take some stuffing, and generally less is more, because I find that it looks like you've got plenty and it's too much. So I take a fistful, and what you're going to do is you've got 2 backs and you've got 2 fronts. So you're going to put it right in the middle of the 2. You're going to puff it down in there. And when you're puffing, I'm going to show you this way. You can feel your corners. You're just going to push it a bit in your corners to make sure it's in there. And see how it only fills it about this far? That's all I want. And then we're going to take our inner one, pull it to the right, pinch it to the left, and we've got 1 in there. You could take a pin and pop it in to hold it in place if you want. Or if you're way better dexterous than me, you can leave it like that and do it all at once. Then I just fold my other one, take my pin out, put my clip in. To me, this goes a little bit faster, but it's also easy for you to accidentally not stuff your item by shoving it between layers that aren't where they belong. So it's really up to you. 2 backs, 2 fronts, pop it in the middle. How's it feel? Feels really good, actually. I don't think, maybe I'll put just a teeny bit more. When you want to add a little more, trust me, a little really is a little. It can make all the difference. That looks pretty good. Okay, so now we're going to take bottom square front, I'm going to push it to the right, fold it to the left. And like I said, if you can hold it in place, good for you. Sometimes I can hold it and fold it, and see how I got my 2 seams sandwiched together. You can actually do that if you're able. But really, if it's faster for you, or easier for you to think, or less fiddly, you do what works for you. So I'll take some stuffy, go between 2 and 2, stuff my corners. Oh, that one needs a little bit more. That feels lovely. Match my backs, pinch my first. Oh, you're not pinching right. Let's try you again. Pinch my first. Ooh, you're not a very big pinch. Uh-oh. Let's try you one more time. That's better. There. Stuff a pin in you. And we will overlap you. And stuff a pin in you. Now I want to make a comment at this point, just in case you're wondering. Your pleats don't have to be in the exact middle for it to come out nice. See how some of mine are nicely centered and some of mine are a little off? It really is not going to make a difference when it's done. It really isn't. You can make it as precise as you want, but don't feel as though you have to. You really don't. Save yourself some mental energy. So between the 2 and 2, it's tricky when your fabric and your back and your front are similar. So don't let it throw you. Shove it in. How does that feel? I think it's a little skimpy. Let's put a little bit more in. Let's get you going there. He to the right, he to the left. We got you there, man. These are being really funky right now. Here we go. I'm going to do that because it's not being as cooperative. Some fabrics lay nicer than others. I mean, they all work, really. You can use pretty much anything that's not too shifty. I've seen somebody make a little baby one out of silky fabric. Honestly, me personally, I think I would rather poke my eyeballs out just because that stuff would shred like crazy. And I don't like working with shreddy betties. Okay, so make sure your backs are lined up and that front, pinch it across. Stick a pin. Actually, I think I'm going to pinch it a little bit further across. That feels better. I'm going to stuck you. Oh, look at that. I switched it up. I don't usually use the clip for the, if I'm holding it temporarily, because it's bulky. but it is still possible. I wanted to show you that it's possible. You can adapt this to whatever makes you comfortable. And so we do this all the way down. And I am about halfway, a little more than halfway. I don't know. This one definitely is underfilled. 1, 2. Oh, look, I got to where I pinned. So I'm going to let this be the last one right now. So I got stuffing in there. I got my back lined up, my front lined up and nestled nice and tight. Clip. And I'm gonna do the rest later off camera, just so you don't have to sit and watch the whole time. And I'll stick my clip in it. And we're just gonna go from this point so you know the process. Let's get rid of this. And here we go. Now, if you have a big one, get it on the table so it doesn't pull your stitches out of the way. Now what I'm going to do, clean up some of my mess. And you're going to start, now here's the only trick about this. Now you're going to be starting at your end, which I'm not. But just like on the first row, if this was my very last piece on this side, I would start it with this edge lined up with my edge of the fabric, and I would stitch this first and pinch my pleat. You're going to see that on the other side when I get there. So right now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to start from where I'm at. I'm going to feed this under here, because I know y'all don't really want to sit and watch this forever. And I'm going to just sew it with 1/4 inch. Now, take my clip out and I hold it down. I line it up with my 1/4 inch mark. And I stitch this all shut. Sometimes you're going to find that your fabric will have a little bit of play. It all evens out in the wash. But if you find you have a lot of play in it, you're going to want to pull your pleats a little bit tighter. Sometimes you're going to see that your edges aren't exactly perfect. See how you could see my under fabric just a teeny bit? Not a game changer. You just don't want big, big gaps. And again, adjust, adjust, adjust the whole time. I am only moving my fabric with my needle down. I shift my quilt top, but I'm also mindful that this is laying flat, as it's very easy for it to bunch up, and then you've got a mess that you got to rip out. And we love not having to rip out, don't we? It's so nice when everything comes together like butter. Like butter. Now, yes, it's nice when your seams are nice and perpendicular. Sometimes they'll be a little crooked. A little crooked, fine. A lot of crooked, fix your puckers, because it's going to twist on you later on if it's too puckery in the wrong direction. See how this one's acting a little goofy? I just gave a little snuggie it up, and it's all there. And shift the mammoth. Flatten out the back. Again, if you decided you're going to do a king-size bed, be aware it can count as your workout for the day. Remember to pull your shoulders down every so often, because when you're wrestling with something so heavy, we tend to scrunch our shoulders up. So pull your shoulders down and relax them so you don't end up with a neck cramp. See, this just, it goes along very nicely. There's my line. Back it up. Not gonna shift it too far away. Okay, so I did see that I made a little bit of an oopsie. See how this did a jump? That's because my needle wasn't down. That's easy to fix. and I'm only going to do it because it might pop open at some point. And so that's it. Back up before you made your mistake and run over it again. If you find anything like that, when you're done, before you go to poof it up, you can drive right over it again too. It's all going to be inside, so it doesn't matter how many rows you do. Excuse me, guys. There we go. We're making it to down the freeway. Back nice and flat. Now see how the weight of where I want is above my end line, because if all this was laying off the table, it would be pulling it at angles like this, and it would make it very hard, and you'd be wrestling so much with it. I thought I would let you in on that to prevent you from having frustration. Oh, see, that one's gotten ugly. See that? And you know what? I'm just going to stitch it because that little pucker is not going to make a difference. This is so puffy on the seams that you're really not going to see that. Of course, if I was putting it in a show, I suppose I would have a different... Oh, again, if you put pins in it, make sure that you're taking your pins out before you get there. And not just the clothes. Sometimes I use both. And I had to make sure that I didn't bury any underneath. I didn't break a needle that way once. Okay, so see, I got off my edge. So I'm down to my end. And this is how it is at the very end. So this, all you do is just go from end to end. I was wrong in the beginning. You don't fix it down at the beginning. That's because we've got sicky brain. Okay. So here we are. And now we've got our back and our top, and our next row is ready to do the same thing again that we did toward the beginning, where we're going to find our middle. Oh, here we are. We're going to match it up. Now these seams are going to the right, so I frequently will just take a pin and stick it in like this, holding that seam the way I want it to go, because I find that I love that you don't have to press on this, because imagine what a pain in the butt it was going to be to have to take this to your ironing board and press with all this weight behind it. It's just easier not to have to bother pressing because it doesn't have to be pressed. So that's, you can go through and push all your seams over at one time if you want, or you could do it as you go. But basically I'm going to take, where's my center line again? Right here. I'm going to line up this seam with my center line, put a clip in it, and I'm going to just do that with my little pinchies all the way down. I'm going to match my other quarter point when I get there. Oh, here it is right here. There's a nice seam right here. And I'm going to push it to the right because this row is to the right. I'm going to line it up with my seam. And it's cool. It's kind of self-checking because as you go, if your line ends up not being perpendicular, you're going to stop and say to yourself, wait a minute, I put that in the wrong spot. And then you can shift it. And that helps you not to have your blocks all dragging to the right or dragging to the left, because we don't want that. So again, just like before, you're going to take, where did I start pinning this? Here. Here. You're going to take and you're going to put your 1/4 inch pinch. This helps you to space them so your rows are going to come out straight. You don't have to guess. Yes, you can go through and mark every single one of your battings with your 4-inch marks. You can do that if you want. I just didn't want to. I wanted to do whatever's quick and easiest. So, and you don't even have to pin your 1/4 inch pinch if you have enough hands to do this. Where you match this up, my seam is nice and straight. Put my clip in it, because really all I need them for is to sew down on these edges. And so we're going to go right back where we started from. We're going to clip the entire thing. We're going to stitch down all of these rows again, like we did right in the beginning. And then we're gonna stuff our pockets, pinch them, put our backs and fronts on, just like we did until we get to the very end. And when we're done, the very last row, we're just gonna, instead of adding the fabric on top, we're gonna just stitch across as if this wasn't here, and that finishes it off. Then all you have to do is bind it. And to do that, you take your binding. I cut 2.5 inch fabric. I pressed it in half. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it, I'm going to leave a nice 6-inch gap on my beginning, and I'm going to match it up with my back, and I'm going to sew all the way around after I match it up, and I'm going to just sew all the way around and stitch it on, mitering my corners. And there's lots of YouTube videos out there that tell you how to attach binding, so I'm not going to go to all the details. I'm going to stitch that on, and then it's going to fold over, and I'm just going to put either a straight stitch or a pretty stitch on it. And it's done. It's that simple. So there you go, my quick little tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope this didn't discourage you from making a big puff quilt. But this, to me, is just so much faster than the traditional way. You have a lot less bulk. You see, I didn't have to add another backing. I didn't have heavy seams where I've sewn biscuits together. And I think that you're going to enjoy it too. Have a blessed day. Subscribe if you want to. Merry Christmas.